Everyone sees success. Very few see the sacrifice behind it. This is Vin Jacobs, 24 years old, no wealthy family, no inheritance, no shortcuts. Just a tiny apartment, a backpack, and a dream bigger than his circumstances. Some nights he counted every dollar he had left just to make sure he could afford tomorrow. But while many people looked at their empty wallets with fear, Daniel looked at his as the beginning of a new chapter. He made himself one promise. One day my money will work harder than I do. And from that moment on, everything changed. Every morning before sunrise, Vin was already awake. While the city was still sleeping, he was preparing for another long day. He worked hard, sometimes 10 hours, sometimes 12. Then he came home and kept working on himself. People around him chased appearances, new phones, expensive shoes, weekend parties. Vin chased something different: freedom. He never argued with people who laughed at his simple lifestyle. He simply smiled and stayed silent. Because he understood something they didn't. Not every victory needs an audience. Money disappears when you spend without thinking, but it grows when every dollar has a purpose. He cooked at home, walked instead of paying for rides, bought only what he truly needed. He wasn't depriving himself. He was investing in a future version of himself. The small choices others ignored became the foundation of his success. Because wealth isn't built by one big decision, it's built by thousands of small ones. Vin spent those same hours learning. He read books about investing. He studied successful entrepreneurs. He learned how businesses worked, how money flowed, how ordinary people became financially free. Every page he turned was another step away from poverty. The more he learned, the more he realized that building wealth wasn't about luck, it was about discipline. Years of saving finally led to one important moment. Vin made his very first investment. It wasn't a huge amount. In fact, most people would have laughed at how small it was. But Vin wasn't trying to get rich overnight. He was planting a seed. He understood something powerful. Small investments, given enough time, become extraordinary. So instead of chasing quick money, he trusted consistency. Daniel knew one paycheck would never create the life he dreamed of. So, after work, he kept working. He freelanced. He learned new skills. He started a small online business. Whenever extra money came in, he refused to spend it. He invested it. Again and again. Slowly, his money began making money. Then that money made even more money. The snowball had started rolling. Years passed. Nothing looked exciting from the outside. Vin drove an old car, still wore simple clothes, still avoided unnecessary luxury. People assumed he wasn't successful. Some even felt sorry for him. But appearances can be deceiving. Behind the scenes, his investments kept growing. His businesses kept expanding. His net worth quietly climbed higher every single year. He didn't need to prove anything, because true wealth whispers, it never needs to shout. Eventually, the years of discipline began to show. Vin no longer worried about paying rent. He no longer worried about unexpected bills. His investments now covered expenses that once kept him awake at night. The freedom he dreamed about had finally become reality. Yet nothing about him changed. He remained humble, kind, quiet. Because success had changed his bank account, not his character. One day Vin attended a business meeting. As he walked into the room, his former co-workers froze. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. The quiet man, the one who skipped expensive lunches, who drove the old car, who never bragged, was now the owner of the company they hoped to work for. Nobody saw it coming, because while they were watching appearances, Vin was building assets, silently, patiently, relentlessly. Standing high above the city he once struggled to survive in, Vin watched the sunrise, not because he had reached the end, but because he had become the person he once dreamed of becoming. His journey wasn't built on luck. It wasn't built on shortcuts. It wasn't built on showing off. It was built on quiet discipline, on sacrifice, on patience, on making today's uncomfortable choices for tomorrow's freedom. Remember this. You don't have to tell the world what you're building. You don't need everyone's approval. You don't need applause to keep moving. Stay focused, stay consistent, stay humble, and one day, your success will introduce itself without you ever saying a word. Years ago, Vin believed that money would change his life, and it did. But not in the way he expected. It wasn't the larger home, or the growing investments, or even the financial freedom that became his greatest reward. It was peace. For the first time in his life, he no longer worried about the next bill. He no longer feared an unexpected emergency. He no longer lived from paycheck to paycheck. Every sacrifice, every early morning, every lonely night, every dollar he chose to save instead of spend, had bought him something priceless: the ability to wake up without fear. As the sun rose over the city, Vin smiled. Not because he had become rich, but because he had become the man he once promised himself he would be. The young man who counted his last few dollars in a tiny apartment would hardly recognize the person standing there now, not because his bank account had changed, but because his mindset had. And that's when Vin realized the greatest truth of all. Anyone can dream, anyone can make excuses, but only a few people are willing to quietly do the work, day after day, year after year, without applause and without recognition, without giving up. Success is rarely loud. It is built in the mornings no one sees, in the nights no one applauds, and in the choices no one notices. So if today your progress feels slow, if nobody believes in your vision, if your hard work seems invisible, keep going. Every small step matters. Every dollar saved matters. Every lesson learned matters. Because one day, you won't need to tell people your story. They'll see it in the life you've built. The future belongs to those who remain patient when everyone else quits. Pause. So start today. Start with $1, one good habit, one better decision. You don't have to change your entire life overnight. You only have to refuse to stop. Because years from now, you'll either remember the day you made excuses or the day you finally decided to begin.